Hi, I'm Charity Colleen Krause. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. I'm sorry. Look, I'm I'm happy, but I'm also a bit depleted in some ways, right? I haven't had anything close to something I recognize for a very long time. And when you're in a foreign mindset, meeting all of these different expectations that are not at all natural for you, and yet you're trying to be consistent and authentic, it can be a challenge. I know this. Okay? So maybe you're feeling the same way I am, and maybe you're actually more astute than you're getting acknowledgement for. Like maybe you saw that executive order that was on the White House website at the end of 2018, right? Maybe you saw that. Right? Maybe you saw some other things that happened during 2016 when there was information in the media you can't find anymore, right? Maybe you've seen things before that. You're like, I know I saw that. I know it used to exist. Maybe you also had a collection of more than 2,000 books focused on a period of time and a history of peoples around the world that at some point in time got demographically recharacterized as somehow associated with white supremacy, so it was rendered politically irrelevant, and you're wondering what happened to that entire catalog of history when you literally had the books yourself and they ended up getting taken from you, and now after all this time, you found something you recognize. And apparently, there's a great kerfuffle because they tried really, 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 really hard to get you to cede and forget about that, forget that that existed. Well, apparently, there has been some sort of scientific process at work in the last decade or more. And so it was as if people had a social premise, and then, from or in connection with that social premise, they applied certain concepts of scientific principle and thought that they would engage in some form or process of observation connected to their hypotheses and attempt to try to see if they could demonstrate as fact the understanding of possibilities that they foresaw that compelled them to hypothesize to begin with. So if you get through the other America of compelled impoverishment based upon your origin of birth and some other ascribement of characterization, then you might get to something you remember from a long time ago. And I'm just going to read this. I haven't read it in a very long time. I almost forgot these things. Number one, hypotheses. Socialism, I want to propose, is the hope for human freedom and justice under the unprecedented conditions of life that humanity will face in the 21st century. He had an hypothesis. That was his original hypothesis. The central hypothesis of this book is that the political impulse and movement represented by those bewildered, half exhausted democratic socialist parties continue to be the major hope for freedom and justice. Did somebody coin hope? Oh my. Are we dealing with currency fixing? My second hypothesis is that the fate of human freedom and justice depends upon social and economic structures. Oh my. You don't think someone might have qualms with a structuralist consideration of that which would otherwise be determined to be valuable for society? All of which brings me to my third hypothesis. The revolution we are now living through is creating a social and political environment that, if it is not subjected to democratic control from below, will subvert the possibilities of freedom and justice that capitalism did so much, if reluctantly, to foster. Oh my. So those are the three hypotheses of Michael Harrington in Socialism Past and Future. When was this book published? You don't say. When was Michael Harrington writing about these concepts? 1989. See, I was concerned to think somebody had defrauded the freedom budget by overextending that 10-year period during which time a temporary opening of the Social Security and Medicare Trust was to potentially be able to provide the material preconditions for the flourishing of democratic institutions that would support an effort to acquire at least greater stake, if not overall, ownership of the means of production. But I didn't realize that they needed double leverage using Michael Harrington's life and legacy as well. And that's why his estate is what? Copyrighted? I think your copyright protections expired a little under a month ago, right? And in the meantime, you're on the hook for significant fraud, right? If not outright slander, libel. As a matter of fact, I was present for an extended case concerning libel against a political leader, including a political leader that had substantial holdings in the national interest of his country, right? And then sometime later, somebody else, it might otherwise be considered a colleague, is in a situation where they're accused of libel. Oh my, these are very significant times. It's a good thing that somehow I was able to find this in the morass of all that has been intentionally taken out of public circulation. But because I was absolutely 100% sincere about my political ambitions in service to my own country from last summer, I'm going to revisit the contributions that the estate of Michael Harrington has already made to my political well being, as well as the potential political well beings of people all over the world, but starting with my own country. So I want to thank you for reminding me. That's twice in one day. We've covered both disability and paradigms of behavioral economics testing. Would maintaining hope be considered a qualifier of a determinant as to whether or not behavioral economics testing is capable of yielding the desired outcome?